Gerard's back. I'm back. Hoyne's back. Let's roll, Hoyne. Welcome.
Kane, Gerard, I tell you what I'm most excited about, Kane, is to actually have the gang back
Yeah,
on
we're
a
back.
Tuesday night.
Yes.
Like it's been
a while.
I couldn't
I've
tell
been
you.
missing you, Hoyne.
I think you're the only bloke in the industry that I've ever known to have 3 weeks off at the end of the season before the season's even finished.
I just get to do what I'm told.
Extraordinary.
I just do what
They
I'm
had to
told.
drag him out. He didn't want to go.
He didn't want to go, did he? Didn't want to go. But no, great to have
I
you both
tuned in
back.
each and every week to you blokes on Tuesday night in particular, and Jono, of course. I did hear that Kane had just dropped the ball with a bit of yes, no with Jono, so I just had to check that out. But I tell you what I am interested in.
What are we interested in?
The fact that there were 9 All-Australians in your team that didn't make the All-Australian team.
9.
Yeah, no, you two weren't here for the All-Australian team, were you? Yeah, that we dropped. So, I mean, it's always an interesting discussion.
Give me the top 3.
I think it's been pretty quiet for Kane since Thursday night, hasn't he? He hasn't been asked too many questions about it. I wouldn't have thought, has he?
Give me the top 3 that you reckon they got wrong.
Top 3. I always, and I said this to a few people, I always look at it and just eliminate the howler. That's all. Like, because I think you look at it, there's 40 to 50 players that can, you can easily mount a case. And I think that there's no howler in that team that was selected. I mean, all of them had a really good years. If I had to have the main topic of discussion, it was a bit like everyone else, the D'Ambrosio discussion, would have been number one, sort of topic for me. Harry Sheasel, been on him all year. Thought he was pretty stiff. And then I was actually quite impressed with the team. So, I mean, like our team, and everyone goes, geez, but aren't you disappointed with your team compared to their team? It's like, no, that's not the discussion.
You had Bailey Dale and they had Zorko.
But the discussion is with our stuff is that it's there to actually help, the decision making, and that's where I said I think our stuff is there more importantly to avoid the howler, if you like. And you look at this team and I go, well, I can easily mount a case as to why. Collins is why Wiedering is in ahead of Collins, or why Luke Ryan's in ahead of Bailey Dale, and why Dacos is in ahead of Hayden Young, right? I could easily do that with our stuff. So I think Kane, you've done a really good job. As I said, I clearly would have had in my team had D'Ambrosio on the wing as well, but
was Dacos in your team? Sorry, I didn't.
No, he wasn't. He was the first. He was number 20. Him and Warner. Dacos was 24, and Warner was the.
And that was over ball use, wasn't it?
What was that? Sorry?
Dacos's ball use.
Yeah, Dacos's patch, that 8-week patch, where his ball use went astray a little bit. He got that back towards the end of the season. So. But again, like as I said, I can look at Dacos and go, I can sit there comfortably and go, totally get that.
Rightio, you were put under public scrutiny and public pressure about 25 minutes ago. I know you were listening whilst you were driving in. Kane has just put your...
Oh, you did just tell me that, didn't you?
Kane has got you to put your cannolis on the line.
No, we're going to do that. We'll go through every game. I remember this time last year, the Collingwood faithful hated me. I tipped against them in all 3 games and they won the flag. So, but no, we'll have a bit of fun. We'll go through...
We'll get to that shortly, but let's start with your overall observation. What is it about finals footy you want to speak about, Hoyne?
So we get asked pretty much every year in my time doing this. What changes between home and away footy to finals footy, and it's the obvious question that you get. And the obvious answers are there's a little bit more contest, there's a little bit less uncontested possession, pressure goes up a little bit, scoring becomes just a little bit harder. Ball movement becomes just a little bit harder, but it's nothing where you look at and you go, geez, that's a significant shift, and that part of the game totally changes. But a couple of weeks ago, one of our guys, back office, Christian Jolly, was talking around chaos versus control. And it's a fascinating conversation, and it is something that I think we've uncovered that highlights the biggest shift that we've seen between finals footy to home and away footy. And this is keeping things as simple as you can possibly keep them in assessing what's chaos and what's control. So a chaos game is having more ground balls than there are marks. And a control game is having more marks than there are ground balls. Right? So really simple terms. So if we look at this the last 5 years, right? dead set 50% of home and away matches are chaos and 49% are controlled. There's a 1% that have the absolute even split between them. So give or take, 50% are controlled, 50% are chaos.
Yep.
Uh-huh. That's what you get. Finals footy, best part of 80% of finals are chaotic matches and only 20% are controlled matches. It's you go to the absolute pointy end of the season. The last 43 prelims and grand finals, only 7 of them have had more marks than ground balls in them. Only 7 of them are controlled. You go to the last 15 grand finals, we've only had 3 matches that had more marks than ground balls. And to trim the fat a little bit in those 3, 2019, when Richmond belted GWS, at halftime where they set the game up, blew the game away, game's over. That was a chaotic first half. More ground balls than marks. 2015, when Hawthorn belted West Coast, at 3/4 time where the game was dead, 8 goals in front, whatever, that was a chaos game. And then the last quarter,
So it was a
more
chaos
marks.
game that became a controlled game.
Then the last quarter, there's all these marks, so the numbers get blown away. But trimming the fat.
So trim the fat.
So trim the fat. 15 grand finals, only one of them has had more marks than ground balls.
Who does that then?
Yes, good question.
So let's get into the
Benefit.
teams.
Yeah.
Let's get into the teams. So these are the teams that have been involved in the most chaotic matches so far this year. Carlton and GWS have been involved in 14. Geelong have been involved in 13. Port Adelaide have been involved in 12. Then there's a big gap to the other 4 finalists. The Swans and the Dogs have only been involved in 8. The Lions have been involved in 7. And the Hawks have been involved in 6. I just want to get to
When
the
you
win.
say they've been involved, you mean there have been victory in that?
No. I'll get to the win-loss now. So just the matches. So Swans and Dogs fans, that doesn't sound great to start with, right? But when you have been involved in a chaotic game this year, the Swans are 7-1. Right, they've only lost once. The Dogs are 6-2. So all these teams are going to have winning records, right? Because they're good teams.
Yep.
The Lions and the Hawks are only 50-50 when they've been involved in a chaos-based match this year. The other 6 finalists all have winning records, which you would assume. The Dogs and the Swans clearly have the best win-loss ratio. But the interesting part to me when breaking this down, just to one more layer if I can, right, is who actually wants to be and instigate the chaos game, right? Not necessarily be, just participating in it, but wanting to be in it. There's no finalist that wants the chaos game more than what Geelong does. So they've set it up themselves 14 times this year where they have had more ground balls than marks this year. You look at Port Adelaide. Port Adelaide have only done that 8 times this year. So they force the opposition to go into chaos. Geelong want chaos, which makes for a fascinating battle on Thursday. Port force you to go that way. Geelong want to go that way. 80% of matches go this way in finals. How does that play out Thursday night? So it's just an interesting
When you say
one that
Port force you into chaos, how do they force you into chaos? Is it kicking the ball long? Is
their
it
pressure
applied?
So their pressure's high.
Yeah.
So their pressure is top 3, top 4 in the competition, and they're not a great ground ball team, right? So that assists in their opposition winning more ground ball than actually taking more marks. So that's the biggest thing for me that you're looking for this week is that if you feel that your team needs to play, and I take this back, Kane and Gerard, if I can. So Port Adelaide and Geelong played a final 3 years ago over in Adelaide in a qualifying final in 2021, right? And Geelong were a control-based team for those, 19, 20, 21, right?
Yep.
And Port Adelaide bring that pressure. Geelong try and play this control game. And because you're a little bit off under the most enormous pressure that you're going to get, they get completely opened up. The scoreboard just, takes control, game over, because you can't play the control game. 20% of finals the last 5 years have gone that way. Throw that out the water, and then the 2022 final series, the way that they've wanted to play in 23 and the way that they've wanted to play in 24, there's a different mode that sets up more for what we're going to get. The 80% of chaos happens in finals where it's only 50-50. So it's just something to just keep an eye on. It's interesting if you're Brisbane, right? Because you're Brisbane, you take more uncontested marks than anyone. The ball movement side of things is the best in the competition. What happens potentially if that gets taken away? We'll talk about that as the show goes on. So it's just something to keep an eye on, that this is the biggest shift in the game. Embrace it, be prepared for it, and if you're not prepared to play the ground ball game, and I hear you talk about it a lot, G, and hear you as well, Kane, that it is on the deck ground ball. That is going to be that's going to be key over the next 3 to 4 weeks. If you haven't got your game in good order in that phase, panic stations.
Look out.
So who does it really well for Geelong? Because if you're going, well, ground ball, probably the midfielders have most access to them, but I'm suggesting it's probably not. It's probably the high half forwards that come up, Dempsey, Myers, Close, and these types, but also even their taller forwards. You've been critical at stages of Port's defence, not being able to win ground balls in the defensive 50. You said that's changed since Radaglia has gone forward. Who is it at Geelong, considering they have a weak midfield and a weak ruck division, that is doing this really well?
Well, let's get stuck straight into that. That was the talking point for Geelong. So we'll get stuck straight into Geelong, and we're looking at, why not us? Why can't your team win this week and, more importantly, go all the way? It's exactly this aspect of the game, Kane, that is the reason why Geelong and their coaches and their supporters will be looking at going, this is the reason why we can win. So when you look at it from a ground ball perspective, once the ball leaves the stoppage area, we know from a clearance perspective that is not their strength. But when the ball leaves the stoppage area, that is where Geelong go to work. Only Hawthorn are a better post-clearance ground ball team than what Geelong are. Mm-hmm. Where do Port rank? 18th. 18th. This game is very easy to analyse. Very, very easy to analyse. Get it to the outside and get the flankers involved. Geelong are going to be in it up to their eyeballs. You look at what Geelong's point of difference is, and it is their flankers. That's why, that game against the Bulldogs, Kane and G, a couple of weeks ago in the wet and the mud and all that, just throw that in the bin. They're not going to win that game, right? They get the ball out into the flank in nice conditions or whatever, and they allow Stengel and Myers and Close and Dempsey and Manor and Holmes across the halfback flank. That is their point of difference. And then you challenge Port, as you just said, Kane, inside the forward 50. So in this aspect of the game, Geelong, number 2 on the deck inside their forward 50. Shannon Neal, get the ball to ground. That's all you need to do.
Yep.
Just get the ball to ground and let Manor, Myers, Stengel, Close, Henry, Dangerfield when he's there, let them go to work, because you know what? Port Adelaide, in their own D50, second worst in the competition. Wow. Get it to ground, and that is the reason why you can win. If you can't get this aspect of the game going, you're in trouble.
Has Manor been an underrated recruit?
Oh, he's been fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah, so since he's come back in, he's been enormous.
Hoyne, weather on Thursday, 25... looks to me beautiful, pristine, finals conditions.
Good,
there you go.
Good for ground balls.
If you had told me then, Kane, that it was going to be wet and a slog, I would have looked and going, that's alarm bells. That's Geelong's chance.
So what do Port Adelaide have to do to nullify that?
Well, so then you go to the flip side. So why not us if you're Port? And Kane, you've spoken about it. The whole footy industry has spoken about it. It is simple. Clearance work, clearance work, clearance work. Right? So, number 4, raw clearance team in the competition, but no one turns a clearance into a score more than what Port Adelaide do. They've been extremely inaccurate from clearance, which has hurt them at times, but no one is able to turn that into a score. And more importantly, at centre bounce, number 2 team at turning a centre clearance into a score. That is their point of difference. And just with the Geelong discussion around the clearance, Kane and G, if I can. So, straight away, we all go, they're a poor clearance team, and we know that's not their strength. Since Stewart has gone in as a mid, right, number 6 clearance team in the comp. Okay, so it's not as
dire as you think.
It's not as poor as what it was for the first 4 or 5 months of the year. It's still not their absolute asset. We know that, but it's not as poor as what it is. And just before we just move on from Port, if I can, and I don't, hopefully I'm not rocking the boat here too much, but just be interesting final series for Zach Butters. Because I think by his own standards last year, his 2 finals against Brisbane and GWS were poor by his standards. So, in his 2 finals last year, 12 contested possessions in total. Only 5 clearances in total. Ball use, nowhere really to be seen. His lowest rated game of his 2023 campaign, as good as it was his final against GWS. So
was he tagged? Can you remember?
No, he just looked cooked.
No.
From there. He
No,
just absolutely, a lot of them did look cooked.
Yep.
My mum just texted me, Hoyne. She said, "This guy is making me so nervous for the playoffs."
Oh, I like that. Your
Paul,
mum's a good judge too. Kane.
Should
It
Port
was-
so we're going to get to the. I don't know when you want to get to.
No, you tell me whenever. We're happy to do them at the end of every game.
We've had a good look at this. You've stated the case for Geelong. Is there anything else Port have got going for them other than clearance and centre bounce?
No, they're defending. They're defending really well, Port. Like they're doing. I don't know what you guys think. I didn't get to speak to you after. Like that win against Fremantle, I thought was full of merit and full of credibility. Like this, their defensive profile is significantly different to what it was this time last year. Even when they won the 13 games in a row last year, not once did it look like it does right now. They are hard to play against. They are hard to move the ball
But
against.
Hoyne, all of a sudden, 2 of their keys, 2 out of 6 are not there.
No, and we don't. And all we can go off is our stat, which
Is the
we
numbers.
don't know what that's going to do. Clearly, that's going to be interesting to see what happens with this aspect, given that they are 2 players that did look after smalls more often than not, did move the ball,
Yep.
and be so creative to it. But like, I'm still, if I can do my tip now, I'm still tipping Port Adelaide.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still going Port Adelaide, 3 to 4 goals. I think they deserve to go in as far. But
Well, all the Pie supporters are saying, well, based on that, we're tipping Geelong.
But all we're doing is just putting it out there as if you're a Geelong supporter.
Yeah.
Why? If
Why not
I'm
us?
going to Adelaide, why not us? Well, that's the reason. If you don't get that on your terms, well, you're not going to win. But why not us? That's the reason why Port can win. That's the reason why
It
Geelong
is
can win.
fascinating stuff. As
Well,
we,
what have you got, Kane, in that game? Are you concerned or you're not concerned?
No, I just, as I said yesterday, just Chris Scott makes me nervous. He's going to make things. He's going to do something. I don't know what he's going to do with Cameron. I don't
Have
know.
you had
what
any
he's gonna do with
feedback on
Bledsoe.
Rosie to halfback?
Look, I don't think that's going to happen. That's just what I would do. And
I like it.
I can understand the reason why you wouldn't do it because of the reasons Hoyne's just explained. Number 2, centre clearance to score. Connor Rose is going to be pretty vital in that, and good luck shutting all 3 of them down. So but then I don't know what they're going to do across halfback. Whether it's Burn Jones, who comes in, Dylan Williams probably, but. They're gonna be short with their run and drive, and the way that they've moved the ball from their back half has been really important. And Farrell and Houston are the key pillars to that.
They're not going to change Darcy Byrne-Jones, though, are they?
He went back for a little bit in that Fremantle game.
Yeah,
I don't suspect they will. So unless they've got a small forward that can come in, McEntee I would think will do Stewart. So whether he takes Burn Jones's place and he goes back. I don't know. We'll wait and see how they line up with, but the coach's box battle will be really interesting as well. I can't wait for Friday night, Hoyne. I'm sure you're the same.
Yeah, no, this is the most exciting final, I think, of the 4. I think we're all probably in agreement with that, and it just feels a bit unfair that we're seeing it first week of September. But the Dogs to start with, why not us? Well, why not you? You've got the best profile in the game.
Yep.
Simple as that, and you're starting from 6. So it is actually hard when you look at it. They do not have a weakness in their game at the moment. So offensively, brilliant. Defensively, we've never seen them like this. They are the hardest team in the competition to turn possession into a score against. We've never associated that.
That hasn't
with the
changed
Dogs.
just simply because the Rock Lobster's gone
It's
down
got
there.
better.
It's got better. But something
It's got-
else must have changed to make it have such a...
Well, this midfield group's absolutely flying. The role players now ahead of the footy are making it harder for teams to move the ball because they're able to contribute to what they do defensively. Turnover game, top 3. Clearance game, top 3. Ball movement game, offensively, top 2. Defensively, ball movement game, top 2. Territory game, number 1. It is an unbelievable profile that is just ridiculous that it's not starting from inside the top 4. Why not us if you're the Dogs? The Hawks, we'll get onto them very shortly. Only once in the last 3 to 4 months has Hawthorn conceded 50-plus entries. Right?
Yep.
The Dogs are the number 1 territory team in the comp. So 13 of their last 15 games have the Dogs generated 50-plus entries. Why am I talking about this? Because if there is a weakness with Hawthorn, it is potentially inside their D50. They are unbelievable at denying entries. The 08 Clarko model, unbelievable at denying entries. But once you get it in, you can score against the Hawks. They have improved a little bit, but that is the one area of vulnerability for them. So if the Dogs are one of these teams in the last 4 months on Friday night to generate 50-plus entries and put this back 6, back 7 under pressure like they haven't been before, only once have the Hawks done it. That game was against Geelong, where they were ripped apart. Yes, they didn't have James Sicily behind the footy, but that was the only time where they've been completely ripped apart.
So 50 is the magical number.
50 is a number. Challenge this. They have done this more often than not, the Dogs. No one generates entries more than what the Dogs do. That's why you can challenge and put this Hawks back 6, back 7 under pressure on Friday night.
All right, so the Dogs are flying. It is fascinating that they haven't finished in the top 4, which I think is going to eventually cost them a premiership. I think they're going to go probably a long way, but I think it's going to be hard to go all the way. What else in this game are we looking forward to? And if you're Sam Mitchell, what would you be setting up for, and what sort of game do you want? So
if I'm the Hawks, so right now they have the third best profile in it, which again is just bizarre that they're starting from 7th on the grid.
That's what happened when you lose the first 5
games. Yeah, you do. So a bit like the Dogs, turnover game top 2. So this is since round 8 when they got on their roll. Turnover game top 2, clearance game top 2, ball movement top 6, territory top 4, top 5. They've got everything ticked off, right? We talked about this on the show, and I'm putting this on Newcombe, Warple and Nash, right? We've talked about the Bulldogs strip club on this show and what they do. It is something that we have not seen before. They give you access to first possession at stoppage more often than not. But their ability to be able to strip it off you and then go and then charge from clearance is something that hasn't been done before. So without Day, Newcombe, Warple and Nash, they have to absorb what's coming. They would know what's coming. Adam Kingsley mentioned it in the pre-game before the GWS Bulldogs game that they were aware of it. It's just, well, how do you handle that as a midfield group? If Newcombe, Warple and Nash can handle that and can handle Bont and Treloar and Libber and whoever else, Richards through there, and be able to actually turn that opportunity that the Dogs give you into a clearance chain and get it going forward, then you challenge Bailey Dale, Fraser, Bramble offensively with what you've got with those unbelievable small forwards ahead of the ball. If you can't challenge that and then the Dogs get it going their way, then your defence is under pressure. You're going to be in for a long night. All right. So I know that might sound harsh, Kane. I don't know what you think, but the three of them need to handle that.
And to be fair, they have handled it.
Oh, they've been brilliant.
They've handled it really well. But if you're going to line up midfield pound for pound, you go the Western Bulldogs is frightening compared to Hawthorn on paper. But Hawthorn have handled and absorbed everything you've said all year.
The inclusion of Meek has been a significant.
He's been fantastic. He's been fantastic. So
the weather looks a little bit better on Friday night. Not sure what that plays into. There's some talk. I mean, both sides have performed pretty well in the wet games that they've had this year. That one you mentioned, the Western Bulldogs going to Geelong, was significant. Any guess who? We guess whoing?
No guess whoing tonight. No guess whoing. I'll give you my tip for the Bulldogs. I'm going to go the Dogs by 3 goals. I said 2 weeks ago, I think the Dogs will win the flag. So I've got to keep going with the Dogs on that.
Why not us for the Swans?
So the Swans, offensively, that is your point of difference. There's no better offense than what Sydney have produced throughout the 2024 campaign. No one's scored more than them. No one's got a better forward 50 that's working as well as what Sydney is at the moment. No one scores more off the back of turnover, which we know is 60% of the game. No one scores more off the back of their forward half work, so that's either creating forward half stoppage or winning the ball back off the opposition close to goal. And then they also have the ability to be able to transition the footy and score the second most of any team in the comp from their back half. So they have pretty much every mode possible covered offensively, that if you are not on from either a pressure sense or a defensive sense, they are going to cut you to ribbons. And we've seen that at times, and that's why we've seen them be able to sort of, get over a slow start or a slow quarter, because they have this power to be able to get back into a game quickly in a 15, 20-minute burst. And if you think about final series and finals matches over recent times, think of Collingwood last year to start the final series against Melbourne on a wet night, pile on 5 goals within the first 30 minutes, set the game up, and then they can manage the game from there. They're behind by close to 3 goals in the prelim last year against GWS in a low-scoring game in the third quarter. But then within the space of 20 minutes, they pile on 4 or 5 goals to get themselves back in front. So to have that ability to be able to, absolutely put scoreboard pressure back on the opposition within such a short time frame, that is Sydney's point of difference, and it's something that's going to challenge GWS this week because I think a lot of us are just assuming, and I know it's hard to take out previous campaigns in your head, but we're just assuming that GWS are rolling like they were this time last year. They're not rolling anywhere near as well as what they were this time last year. So defensively, they're nowhere near the same version that they were in the back half of 2023. So this is going to challenge GWS. And I just wanted to put one player on the map if I can. So Matty Roberts' last 6 weeks, we always go to the stars, and I get that, right? It is, but his last 6 weeks, he's been a top 40 player in the comp over the last 6 weeks. And when you look at teams sort of going to work on Nick Blakey and trying to minimise his ball use and trying to minimise Florence ball use, and that's sort of worked to a degree in the back end of the year, there needs to be a little bit of time sort of allocated to watching what this guy does, because his ability to be able to use the ball with that left foot has been something that's been really, really pivotal to the Swans over the last 6 weeks, and it's going to be interesting to see how it goes over this finals campaign.
Oh, what do you think, Gerard? For your Swans, who you watch
this game, look, for the entirety of the season, I've always thought that the Swans were susceptible to the chaos game because they love moving the ball. And so I was taken a little bit aback by the numbers when it went into chaos, 7-1, which to me is a really interesting point that you've raised here, Hoyne. The issue is, can they turn it on at will? And if they can, why don't they just play chaos full stop?
Well, yeah, they've played in a chaos match 8 times, as you said, and they're 7-1. So we did put that as a red flag at the start of the year, and we talked about it heading into their round 8 game against GWS, where we knew that it was going to be wet. They were flying, but it was like, okay, is there a little bit too much sort of marking and reliance on possession here? It's going to be interesting to see how it goes, and they handled that brilliantly.
Yep.
And they've handled it really well across the course of the season. So, I mean, you're not going to change the way that you play now, but knowing that if it's going to be a ground ball game, that you've got that win-loss record, sort of record of 7-1. I think
the inclusion of Parker really helps their ground ball. I mean, everyone gave Healy the credit for the Collingwood game, and rightly so. But sitting right beside him was Healy when he went into the middle, and he got a couple of clearances, a couple of stoppage clearances around the ground as well. I think he's been a significant inclusion for them.
Yeah, no, he has. I've actually got him mentioned on this show towards the end of the night.
All right, we're looking forward to that. Tell us about the Giants. Why not us for them?
Yeah, why not us? So, so as I said before, the reality is that, for 70% of their profile at the moment, it's okay without being absolutely, rock solid. And we're talking, greens are sort of, anything sort of top 6. Yeah. Reds are anything bottom 6. Right now, there's a lot of white on their table, which is just anything between 7 to 12. So not horrendous, but not great. But why GWS can win, if you think back to Collingwood in 2022 and their profile heading in to a September campaign where they finished 4th, their profile wasn't in great nick. They were winning games by small margins, coming from behind at 3/4 time. And then they had a final series where they ran Geelong to a goal and ran to Sydney by a point. And you go back and it's a bit of a learning curve. Their pressure heading in was number 2 in the comp. And what pressure alone can do for you in a final series when it becomes chaotic and it becomes scrappy and you know that you have that pressure game, how far that can take you is going to be so interesting with GWS this year, because there's no one that pressures the opposition better than what GWS do. So how far can that take you when the other 70%, 80% of your game is going okay without being absolutely threatening? The other aspect for the Swans is, as I said, with the chaos and control game, when the ball leaves a stoppage area at ground level, GWS top 6 in the comp. So that is where they are strong. The Swans, bottom 3 in the comp. So pressure and ground ball is the reason why they can challenge the Swans on Saturday and get themselves through to a home prelim. If they don't bring that absolute manic 190 to 195 sort of pressure rating, AFL average is 180. If you don't bring that, I think that they're going to be in strife because the rest of their game isn't in as strong a shape as what it was last year. Just two players I just want to put on the agenda here. So clearly, you would have thought everyone in Australia knows that probably James Jordan's going to go straight to Lachie Whitfield. Bit like we know that probably McEntee's going to go to Stewart. What did GWS do with that magnet? He's so integral to their ball movement. They've shut him down a couple of times. So what do they do there? And then Sam Taylor. So this defensive profile at the moment is going okay, as I said, without being absolutely rock solid. His season this year has been a little bit stop-start, sort of that concussion, the injury during the year. But his last 2 weeks have been the best, probably his best 2 weeks of the year. So 19 intercepts in 2 weeks, 21 spoils in 2 weeks. So pretty much, diffusing 40 opposition, threats in those 2 weeks. So what he does, not only on Saturday but during this September campaign, is going to dictate a lot of what GWS can do.
I don't think he's done this role before, but I think Logan McDonald is sort of looking to find what sort of player he is.
Yep.
Is there any chance he could diffuse one of the key defenders?
I think you can try, but I think the beauty about Sam Taylor is even if that happens, he still has the ability to get off. And I will play on you, but I will still also go out and help my mate and cover over here and peel off over here. I think that's the beauty of...
Haven't seen his best that often this year.
No, we haven't. I think that's the beauty of a Sam Taylor and a Jeremy Govan and a Harris Andrews, if you like, that they're able to sort of peel off and help out more than some other key defenders.
What do you think Sydney will do with the ringer Rosie in the Giants forward line with Hogan trying to dictate the matchup?
Well, I always believe that some of these, unique things that happen take a bit of time for the industry to work out exactly what to do. Like you can't, it's pretty straightforward, isn't it? That you know that Hogan's going to try and get Mulligan, right? But you know that McCartan's got a good record on him. So just stand off and just don't get sucked into it.
Fight it,
Stand off 5 metres away and just wait and just let them think. I'm not going to get in a wrestle with you. I'm just going to stand a couple of metres away. And when the ball gets into open play and you want to move, I'm going to move with you. I'm not going to get sucked into you. Like once the ball's in general play, you're not going to have a pair of 4 running around the whole ground. You have a pair of 4 starting next to each other, either at a stoppage or at a centre bounce. But then once the ball's bounced, it just becomes general play footy. Just don't get sucked into it.
Yep.
I don't know.
A couple of texts asking the same question here, Hoyne. Has this bloke had coaching offers from AFL clubs or forward scouts, yes or no?
No, we just stick to talking with you and Kane
That's
on a Tuesday night. That's more enjoyable.
They wouldn't pay him enough, Gerard.
No,
They would not pay him enough. Last question on this game from me. Bedford to Warner, just put it there, done or not?
Yep.
Yeah,
no,
Warner
Bedford,
and not Goulden.
I just don't think. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. I haven't seen Bedford tagged a winger. Sort of, this year he's tagged more as a centre bounce stoppage sort of midfielder, which is, I would, if you've got someone, I would be absolutely investing someone to go to Goulden. To me, that person could be Harry Perryman. So Harry Perryman at times has done the wing role and has looked after someone on the wing. I would be absolutely investing time into Goulden. I just wouldn't be using that with Toby Bedford.
All right, and who wins and why?
Swans by, I'm going to go 4 goals for me.
So I've got a 2, 3 and a 4.
Yeah, Swans by 4.
We're going for a flush after this.
Why not us? What are the Brisbane Lions doing well and why will they win this game?
So why not us? You got the second best profile in the game behind the Dogs at the moment. So number 1 team in terms of turning possession into a score. So the inaccuracy component is the reason why you haven't put the most.
That's the answer to why not
the most points. And then defensively, along with the Dogs, the second hardest team in the comp to turn possession into a score. So you've got both sides of the footy down pat. Now people keep telling me that Carlton want to play the stoppage game, they want to play a clearance game, they want to get Paddy Cripps involved, and they've done that beautifully the last 2 weeks when they've needed to at times. But if that happens, that plays into Brisbane's hands as well. I mean, they are the second best clearance team in the competition, and they get it on the scoreboard more often than not, which we know at times this year has been a weakness of Carlton, their inability to defend clearance losses. Ball movement, number 1 in the comp, defending ball movement, top 4. So that's the reason why you look at it, and a bit like the Dogs, you're frustrated that this team and this profile is not starting at the opportunity to host a prelim final. They're starting from 5th, which is going to make it so hard. I just wanted to put Hughie McCluggage, just a bit of recognition there. Probably been a bit harsh on Hugh over the last couple of years. But over the last 5 or 6 weeks, he's now a top 25 player in the competition. And his finals campaign last year against Port and against Collingwood Grand Final Day, 12 score involvements against Port, 4 score assists of that. And then Grand Final Day against Collingwood, 2 goals and 4 score assists. So 8 score assists in his 2 finals against Port Adelaide and Collingwood last year. Had a fantastic final series. There is probably, you are going to assume that Lachie Neale's going to get some attention. So someone like a Hugh is going to have to stand up like he did in the final series last year and like he has done over the last 5 or 6 weeks.
What are you worried about mostly for Brisbane?
Worried about accuracy.
Yep.
History tells you that 2 of 9 finals over the last 10 years, 2 of 9 finals each year gets decided by accuracy. So a bit like the Dogs, that's probably their only concern at the moment. And something else that I'll just get into with when talking about Carlton right now.
All right, let's do it.
So the Blues, so why not us, right? So we know that their contested clearance working strong, but so too is Brisbane. Right? So when you look purely at just week 1 of finals for Carlton, why not us? It's going to be your pressure game. So we, as we just spoke about with GWS, what can pressure alone do to you in a finals match, in a finals campaign like it did for Collingwood in 2022? So Carlton's pressure this year is the 3rd best of any team in the competition. And their matches as a whole, when you combine your pressure and the opposition's pressure, no one plays in higher pressure matches than what Carlton do this year. Right? So you would assume that holds you in good stead for a final series. So 180 is the AFL average for pressure. They've only done under 180 in a game this year 3 times. So 3 out of their 23 matches under 180, which is a significant achievement. Why this number is important? Brisbane have only received a pressure of over 180 on them 10 times for the year. They've got a win rate of 40% when teams apply a pressure rating of over 180. So you would assume Carlton are going to do that this week, given that they have done it 20 out of 23 times this year. You do that, you give yourself the best chance of beating Brisbane. You don't do that, unfortunately, Kane, I'm going to be with you, that it's going to be a pretty bleak night. But if you do it, funny things have happened, and that has put Brisbane under pressure at times this year.
I mean, it's hard to assess it, isn't it, when you don't know the personnel and the changes to the personnel now. You
don't know what the changes are capable of doing.
No.
But even just with the personnel, Kane, if I can, I've heard a lot about it, and I get it, right, that there's 6 of 8. But it's not as if these guys have been injured for 2 months.
You're right. And their form, even with these guys, wasn't great.
Spot on. Like the Hawthorn game, everyone tells me about injuries. The game was dead 45 minutes in before the injuries had actually really taken place. And the form had been starting to really, drop off even when these blokes were playing. So, I think it's a little bit overplayed.
Any chance Hipwood could end up in defence?
I wouldn't have thought for this final series. It'd be interesting to see what happens in the off-season. Potentially they'd look at doing that, but I wouldn't have thought this final series, given that, in all likelihood, from what Fague said last night on 360, that Jack Payne's coming back. So
had he not been injured, I reckon he might have got a couple of more quarters down there.
Yeah, no, that would have been interesting to see. But no, I wouldn't be bracing for that if I'm a Brisbane supporter.
Hoyne, the MDFP stands for most damaging finals players.
Yes. So just quickly, we haven't got any performances from the weekend. So I just want to put one individual quickly on the radar for your team who has had a great finals record over the last 5 years. Sydney, Luke Parker, his ability to be able to win the ball and an impact in that phase of the game. Willie Rioli, his final last year against GWS was really impactful and kept them in the game and kept them close. 3 goals, 3 score assists. Zach Tui, look for this on Thursday night if Tom Stewart gets tagged, which we know. Geelong would try and get a loose ball. His finals record and his ability to use the ball has been really strong. GWS, Josh Kelly was flying this year.
Yep.
His finals record has been superb. He's back. Look for what he can do. Joe Danaher, number 1 rated key forward across the final series over the last 5 years. So his finals record ticked off for Joe Danaher. Caleb Daniel, I'm throwing this one out there. He might not even play or he might be the sub. But only Bont, Libba and McRae have rated higher than Caleb Daniel in finals the last 5 years. Hawthorn, interesting one with Hawthorn. Only Ginnivan and Carl Amon have played finals the last 5 years. So we'll revisit the Hawthorn. That's just exciting in itself.
I like it.
And then just for Carlton, Zach Williams. So Zach Williams, think back to what he did in the 2019 final series for GWS, in particular that prelim against Collingwood. And his finals record has actually been quite strong. So just a couple of little individuals outside of the obvious superstars that we all know, will play a key role in this campaign.
Well, the Giants tried to keep the ball away from Sydney by just maintaining possession.
Interesting, because if they do that, they go away from who they are.
Yeah.
But that brand of keeping off against the Swans has worked at times. But do you stick true to who you are? So that will be different if the Giants do that.
Might be my favourite edition of the year.
Oh, he's been strong, hasn't he?
Absolutely
there's a lot there.
flying.